Husky Dip believes in a hard day's work, quality craftsmanship, and not wasting money on mediocre dip. We only use tobacco grown right here at home, so every can's guaranteed fresh. Husky's dark fire, barrel aged dip you don't have to pay a premium for. We call that doing right by your dip dollar. Go ahead and try it for yourself. Find it in a store near you. It's hard to beat Husky. Not all varieties available in all geographies. Warning, this product can cause gum disease and tooth loss.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Therapy by the Book, the show where we take your favorite fictional characters and ask the question, what would it be like if they came to therapy? My name is William Haddad, and for today's character client, we have a father and son family session with Goofy and Max from a Goofy movie. We're going right back into the heart of 90s nostalgia for this Disney classic. A Goofy Movie is a film from 1995 and tells the wild but simple story of Goofy and his son Max with dueling motives as they embark together upon an unforgettable cross-country road trip. Fun fact about this film, at the 2015 D23 convention, there was a showroom event commemorating this movie's 20th anniversary. More people turned up to attend it than did for the next door Star Wars event featuring George Lucas. Goofy is one of Disney's most enduring figures. He's a character who has worn countless hats across the animated universe, from stuntman to knight, ghost hunter, sportsman, and slapstick foil. In A Goofy Movie, however, these multiple identities narrow into something far more simple and grounded: a single father raising his teenage son Max. While Goofy remains unmistakably himself, defined by his trademark clumsiness, laughter, and a singular ability to trip into chaos at any moment, this version of Goofy is also presented as a working-class parent who shoulders the responsibility of family with genuine devotion. Goofy's personality is, well, goofy. He laughs easily, he has a tendency toward absent-mindedness, and a long history of misreading social cues in ways that often result in comic spectacle. He's the sort who might wave enthusiastically to a neighbor only to topple backward over his own garden hose, or open a bottle only to be startled into a full-on pratfall when the cap pops off unexpectedly. In fact, Goofy has a habit of overreacting physically. One imagines him accidentally stubbing his toe only to launch into a wail so dramatic you'd think he'd lost the whole foot. What makes these exaggerated reactions endearing rather than exasperating, for most people anyway, is the sincerity behind them. Goofy's clumsiness is very much a natural extension of a body and personality that never quite fit the mold of normalcy. With that said, we also see Goofy as not careless. For all his fumbling, he's still shown in the movie to be a responsible adult. He manages the household, he sees Max off to school, and holds down a steady day job. Although these scenes are brief, we can see Goofy presents not as a constant clown, but actually someone deeply invested in their daily tasks, and trying to impart values to Max through the little rituals of family life. His efforts are rarely perfect, but they are consistent, and that consistency is where his parental strength shines brightest. One of the paradoxes of Goofy's character is that, despite his clumsiness, he is also capable of surprising grace when the stakes shift. Complex physical motions, particularly those with rhythm or precision, bring out a latent skill. We see him cast a fishing line in one scene with downright elegance, and dance with both flair and agility in another. This hidden aptitude also extends to his role as a father. Though bumbling, Goofy's instincts often prove trustworthy. A crucial example of this comes later in the story, when the character of Pete, Goofy's longtime foil and the closest thing the film has to an antagonist, attempts to sow discord between Goofy and Max. Pete claims that Max selfishly altered the route of their father-son road trip, betraying Goofy's original plan. Goofy's reaction in this moment is telling. Rather than doubt his son or lash out, he defends Max unconditionally. Even after, when Pete's accusation proves true, Goofy chooses not to confront Max directly. Instead, he waits, preferring to give his son the chance to come clean on his own. This act of faith is one of Goofy's most admirable qualities. His willingness to trust his child and believe in Max's goodness even when evidence wavers shows a parent who loves unconditionally and values the relationship over being right. Of course, this doesn't mean Goofy is a flawless parent. His kindness and lighthearted outlook are paired with a certain obliviousness to Max's own emotional reality. Like many parents of teenagers, he struggles to see how quickly Max is growing up. For most of the film, Goofy continues to treat him with the same affectionate humor of childhood, not realizing that Max is desperate to be taken seriously. To Goofy, laughter and lightness are natural tools for navigating life, but to Max, they can feel minimizing in the face of his growing independence and insecurity. Goofy's own childhood also helps explain this tension. During the road trip, he often talks about his father and grandfather with nostalgia, recalling a family life shaped by different values and a slower pace. These reminiscences suggest to us that Goofy grew up in a household where traditions and shared activities, like fishing trips or storytelling, were the bedrock of connection. While he carries those patterns into his own parenting, he also takes it for granted that Max will receive them with the same warmth he did. What Goofy fails to recognize is that Max, living in a new generation, with new norms and social pressures, experiences these traditions more as sources of embarrassment. This gap between Goofy's intentions and Max's perceptions is where the worst of their heartache lies. Goofy's lightheartedness, while genuine, often misses the gravity of Max's need to be seen as mature. Goofy is not incapable of seriousness. We do see moments when he engages in deeper, more reflective conversation, but they don't come naturally to him, and are far fewer than Max would like. Nevertheless, when all is said and done, they reveal that beneath the goofiness lives a father who is capable of emotional depth. Max, on the other hand, enters a Goofy movie at a classic crossroads, the threshold of adolescence. He's a teenager caught between childhood and adulthood, fumbling toward identity with that awkward urgency so many of us remember. In short, he just wants to fit in. We quickly see that Max carries a chip on his shoulder as well. It isn't just the usual teenage self-consciousness, though that's part of it. He also feels burdened being Goofy's son. At an age when every social interaction feels like a high-stakes audition, Max is all too aware of his father's clumsy exuberance, silly laugh, pratfalls, and sunny optimism that ignores social rules. What Goofy sees as easygoing, Max sees as humiliation. It doesn't help that Max has inherited that same signature laugh, the that bursts out unbidden, betraying him in moments when all he wants is to seem cool. At school, Max is a bit of a social outcast. He's not a total outsider, but he's much closer to the margins than the center, and clearly fighting against the geek label that was very common throughout American high schools in the 80s and 90s. As adults, we tend to forget how, for teens like Max, every day is a balancing act. Hide what feels embarrassing, amplify whatever might seem cool, and hope desperately with every fiber of your being that somehow you'll be accepted. For Max, the stakes feel cosmic, especially when it comes to the character of Roxanne, who's his crush. One goofy misstep, one laugh at the wrong time, and the dream of being seen as attractive, mature, and interesting could explode forever. That's how it feels for him. Beneath all this insecurity, however, Max actually possesses more talent than he realizes. Like his father, he has a knack for unexpected feats and improvisation under pressure. He can think fast, move with agility, and surprise when the moment calls for it. One of the film's iconic early scenes actually highlights this side of him. In a bid to impress Roxanne and shake off the geek label once and for all, Max sneaks into the school auditorium dressed as his favorite pop superstar, Powerline. What begins as a prank soon catapults into a dazzling performance. Max sings, dances, and commands the stage with a charisma far beyond what his peers expected. A stunt that could have backfired spectacularly instead earns him not just a rush of self-confidence, but also a new level of popularity. Ironically, Max is startled by his own success. The idea that he could captivate an audience, let alone win admiration for it, runs completely counter to his daily self-image as someone barely holding on to their dignity. This scene also carries a hidden truth. When Max leans into his passions instead of hiding them and lets go of the pressure to conform, he shines. The very qualities which he tries to suppress, exuberance, energy, the ability to laugh at himself, basically everything about Goofy that embarrasses Max, are what make him magnetic in his own right. In a double irony, this paradox also links Max and Goofy more closely than either realizes. In a sense, Max is struggling to throw off the very same social pressure that Goofy has clearly cast to the winds long ago. Donning the costume disguise of his idol allows Max to experience this briefly, but Goofy is already living it by default. Goofy's unself-conscious goofiness that refuses to conform to what others think is precisely what embarrasses Max, but also is, in a way, a kind of freedom. That freedom is something Max yearns for in his heart, although obtaining it as he is now in the way Goofy has would probably feel inconceivable to him. You may as well tell Max to fly to the moon using a paper airplane. Ultimately, Max presents as a teenager locked in a tug-of-war between shame and authenticity. He fears becoming his father, even as he already shares his father's instincts. He longs to be taken seriously, even as his greatest gifts emerge when he stops taking himself seriously. Like so many teenagers, Max doesn't yet see that what he finds embarrassing in his parent is the very thing that might someday liberate him. The central narrative of a Goofy movie revolves around the father-son road trip. The trip itself, however, is less a leisurely drive and really more a rolling experiment in cultural anthropology. I want you to imagine for a moment two cosmic forces, one of positive energy, the other of negative energy, colliding inside a single station wagon. On one side, Goofy, forever stuck in a 1950s time warp, humming country tunes and pointing out scenic overlooks with all the self-control of a 10-year-old tour guide. While on the other side, Max, bleary-eyed, blasting rock music and staring out the window like he's contemplating escape velocity. This is the trip atmosphere we open with. And it's a constant seesaw. For every over-the-top dad antic, Max has a groan and an eye roll at the ready, and their differences continue to play out over the course of the story with increasing tenacity. Goofy cracks a joke about the good old days, and Max answers with a deadpan sarcasm sharp enough to cut the seatbelt. Max daydreams about the future, concerts, cool cars, Roxanne, while Goofy can't stop reminiscing about what things were like when folks knew how to polka. And yet, beneath the squabbling, they of course share more than they realize. For example, both Max and Goofy light up around sports and show equal pleasure at one scene when they're attending a baseball game. They each have a sense of adventure and tend to approach it with a hands-on mentality. They also instinctively recognize the significance of the little moments, like snapping a quick photo. Watching the movie as the story unfolds, one might say that their real joy lies in the mismatched rhythms of two people who are unknowingly dancing to the same beat. Perhaps most importantly, neither one ever dismisses the other's needs out of hand. Goofy may overlook emotional signals, Max may withhold certain details, but the overall compassion for one another is not lacking. Something that I thought was profound about this film is that for all his missteps and embarrassing antics, Goofy never once pressures Max to become someone else. He never asks Max to be more outgoing, more capable, or more goofy. He accepts his son as he is, quirks and all, and his attempts to connect, even when clumsy, are nevertheless grounded in a steady respect for Max's individuality. Max, though resistant, also demonstrates this same capacity for compassion. As the road trip wears on, he starts to make more choices that acknowledge his father's joys, even when they are not his own. For example, detouring to yarn museums isn't Max's idea of fun, but he does it anyway because he knows what it means to Goofy. It is the growth of this shared path where each learns to see the other more clearly that, as their therapist, I would strive to help them realize ever further. Coming now to diagnosis, neither Goofy nor Max presents with severe or deeply impairing conditions. However, both do display some patterns worth noting in the therapeutic context. For Goofy, the likeliest fit is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, of the adult type. His hallmark traits, boundless energy, distractibility, exaggerated responses, and a tendency toward physical and conversational tangents, all align with this profile. He moves through life in a rhythm that often looks scattershot from the outside but feels natural to him. Importantly, the presentation of ADHD is still mild to moderate. Remember, Goofy's functioning is affected but not impaired. He's a steady parent and a responsible worker. His challenges appear most in the form of social awkwardness, impulsive mishaps, and difficulty reading the more subtle emotional cues. This diagnosis helps to clinically explain his behaviors, but it does not define him. Max, by contrast, presents with something far more situational. His symptoms align with adjustment disorder with an anxious mood specifier, essentially the stress of navigating rapid developmental changes in identity, peer relationships, and self-concept. Max's embarrassment around his father, his fear of being labeled uncool, and his bursts of insecurity about Roxanne all point to temporary struggles born from adolescence. These symptoms are real, but not pathological, at least not in the deeper sense. They describe a normal teenage storm, one that time, maturity, and connection can and will help him weather. In both cases, these diagnoses are descriptive tools, not defining labels, and the heart of Goofy and Max's healing really lies less in clinical terms than in the ongoing exchange of love, trust, and recognition between father and son. The therapeutic approach for Goofy and Max is best suited to conjoint family sessions, keeping them together in the room to encourage further mutual understanding. The focus would be talk-based, centering on open dialogue, honest acknowledgement of vulnerabilities, and the gradual rebuilding of trust in their bond. I might begin by acknowledging the road trip itself as a turning point, pun intended. Your reasons for undertaking that journey may have been different, I say. Goofy wanting to hold on to tradition, Max chasing independence, but you still found yourselves laughing, exploring, and sharing moments of joy. What allowed you to meet in the middle? What worked for you as a team? This frame might help soften their differences, as well as highlight their shared success. As we progress, different sessions might explore questions tailored specifically to each. For Goofy, what, in your opinion, is Max's greatest strength? What does being a father mean to you? What values do you hold? What is it like for you to be Max's father right now? How do you feel about Max growing up? Goofy's answers, delivered in his trademark drawl and often punctuated by an unplanned might bring both humor and heart to our sessions. As Goofy himself might put it, "Gosh, Maxie's the smartest kid I know, always figuring out things faster than me. Being his dad, well, means every day is the best day, even when I back the car into the mailbox." Remember that beneath all his silliness, there lies sincerity. Goofy's pride and love in his son are undeniable. For Max, I ask, how does it feel to be old enough to need more space? What kind of person do you feel like inside versus how you imagine others see you? What about your dad embarrasses you most? What about him makes you proud? Max's tone, quieter and tinged with teenage hesitation, still carries a hint of warmth. While Goofy's antics can be mortifying in public, the therapy space might enable Max to share how his dad's humor and loyalty can also make him glad. It's a strong reminder of how joy can nevertheless coexist with discomfort. One lingering question, of course, is the absence of Max's mother. The film never explains where she is or what role she played, and in therapy, that absence matters, not only as a practical gap, but also as an emotional one. Exploring how both Goofy and Max have each processed her absence, whether through silence, words, or other behaviors, will be an important part of the healing journey. However many sessions we meet for, one point I would make sure to emphasize is the enduring strength of their bond. In closing, I would state this: time marches ever on. For better or worse, your lives will change. Max will grow, Goofy will adjust, but change does not always mean loss. What I see here is a strong foundation that doesn't have to waver. So long as you remain honest, compassionate, and hold on to what you value in your hearts, there could be many more road trips to look forward to together. Well, that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. Next time, it's the Season 1 finale of Therapy by the Book. So until then, wishing you all safe travels on the open road.